my next SAS list video. I am so excited to be presenting this to you all. I love that I have a SAS list series. It is just yay! So from now on, this video included, I will only be talking about series that I have completed on my SAS list. If you haven't seen it before, I'll put an image of it up here. Last week we did this video, which was all the series that I DNF'd, did not finish, and DNS did not start. So some downers in that one. But we should be getting some more positive reviews coming your way because I've read some pretty good series, so we'll see how we go. Alright, so I am going to jump right on in. Let's begin. The first series I'm going to talk to you about is this series, the Betrothed series by Kiera Cass. This is a duology. Okay, so let's do star ratings. Book 1, which is The Betrothed, I gave this book 5 stars. Book 2, The Betrayed, I gave this book 4 stars. I had read this book in December? Yep, in December of 2020, so a long time ago. And I read this one this year to complete the duology. Alright. I'm going to put the books up on the screen. It will just be a lot easier. So let's start off by putting The Betrothed up there first so I can talk about this. Okay, so I went into this book having read some other books by Kiera Cass. I love her selection series so much. Oh my goodness. And I'd also read that standalone, I think it's called The Siren, and I love that too. So when I found out that Kiera Cass was doing another dystopian series, I was incredibly excited. When I started reading this one, it very much reminded me of The Selection. It had Selection vibes, it's set at a royal palace, all that sort of thing. But honestly, at this point, I don't remember a lot about it, and that's more explained when I discuss book number 2. But I enjoyed this one a lot. I had a lot of fun with it. We are following a female protagonist by the name of Hollis, We're following Hollis, who is such a mentally tough female protagonist, and that's definitely something that's right up my alley. I love smart, intelligent women, reading about those types of women in books, so that definitely worked for me. I love the dystopian atmosphere. I just loved book 1. I really enjoyed it. But now let's put up book number 2, this one, The Betrayed. And yeah, I kind of felt a little bit betrayed, but since I don't have Kiera Cass around and I can't question her, I'm just going to say I'm disappointed because I don't know what happened. So book number 1 set us up for a really amazing series, and then book number 2, the first half of this book, The Betrayed, continued on with the amazing foundational ground-laying work that Cass had done in book number 1. And then the second half of the book was like a speedy, times a million fast-forward way to wrap things up. And I don't know. I wish I could ask Kiera Cass, did you always know this was going to be a duology, or were you stopped at some point and told that you could only do one more book? If the answer is the latter, it makes more sense because the first 1.5 books were so fantastic, but the second half of the second book was so rushed that it just felt more like Cliff Notes version as opposed to the second book. So that did let me down. But I was able to take a step back after I read the second book and think about how things would have progressed had this been an actual series, whether it was a trilogy of 3 books or 4 books or more, and I would have loved it if Cass could have slowed down and written more books in this series, because I can see what would have happened because of the rushing second half of book 2. So yeah, I gave book 1 5 stars, book 2 4 stars. The main reason I took off that 1-star rating was because of the rushed second half. But otherwise, I thought the series was good. I just wish that it was longer. But hey, it's the first series I completed on my SAS list, so that's one series done. Let's move on to the next one. So the next series I'm going to talk to you about is the Skyward series by Brandon Sanderson. I'm going to give you a little bit of an interesting side note when we get to book number 3. So keep an ear out. But, okay, there are 3 books in this series, at least so far. I don't know if there is going to be a 4th, and if there is, we'll see how things go. But book 1 is Skyward. By the way, this is the Delacorte Press edition. I love this edition. It is so much better than the UK one. I paid not only for a good quality hardback, I wanted this edition. I love the color purple in it. I think it's fantastic. I also paid for the shipping because this series is an American edition, but it's worth it to me because they are just such beautiful editions of the story. But anyway, book 1 is Skyward. I read this in September of 2020 and I gave this book 4 stars. Book number 2 is Starsight. I read this book in October of 2020 and I gave this book also 4 stars. And so all I needed to read to get up to date was this book, book number 3, Cytonic, and I read this book in June of 2022 and gave this book 3 stars. Here's the little side note that I was telling you about. This book, Cytonic by Brandon Sanderson, is and will be, because I know the rest of the year and how my reading's going to go, the only Brandon Sanderson book that I read in 2022. Now, if you don't know me, you may think, oh, well, you know, you read a Sanderson, that's good. But if you know me, you know how much of a jaw-dropping statement that is. Ever since February of 2020, when I read Mistborn: The Final Empire, I would at least read 1 Brandon Sanderson every single month. And if for whatever reason I missed a Brandon Sanderson book in a month, I would catch up in the following month and read 2. So this year, it's just literally been this one book, and it was a sci-fi, not even a fantasy. Can you believe it? I don't know. I don't know if I'm growing out of Sanderson or not, to be honest, but I've been reading a whole ton of cozy mysteries this year, so that may have something to do with it. Who knows? Here's a heads up. I don't have a Sanderson series on my SAS list next year, although I might be doing a buddy read of Rhythm of War next year, so We'll see if that happens, because if it does, it might force me to actually read the book. So, anyway, alright, let's discuss this series. Alright, Skyward Book 1. Let me give you a premise of this one, because this series is staying a lot more strongly in my mind compared to the Betrothed and Betrayed. So, okay. The premise of this is that we follow a girl by the name of Spencer. Now, that is Spencer, S-P-E-N-S-A, and not Spencer, like Pretty Little Liars. We follow Spencer, and right at the beginning of the book, like chapter 1 or prologue, if it's a prologue, so the first chapter, she and her father, they live somewhere that's very much like outer space type situation. It's a sci-fi. And she and her father go off in a spaceship to do something. I don't remember what it was, but what I do remember is her father ends up dying. Now, her father was a big shot who was fighting on the side of the humans in a war that's going on between the humans and an alien species. So when Spencer finds out that her father has died, not only is she told that he died, but she is told he died a cowardly, and I'm saying it that way for a reason, a cowardly death. Because everyone tells her this, and suddenly Spencer's gone from someone who, has a father who's fighting against this alien race and she is respected, to someone who's completely disrespected. No one respects her at all because of her father. She has no other family. And this makes life tough for Spencer because she wants to follow in his footsteps. Eventually, she gets into the training program to do what he does, but if not for the sheer willpower and determination that she has, she may not have even gotten into the training program to begin with. And so Spencer is clearly mentally incredibly tough and a massive fighter, and I really appreciate that about her. It had me invested in her pretty much from the get-go. So the first book is basically her in training, preparing her for what is to come when she starts fighting herself against the alien race like her father did. So I enjoyed it. I gave it 4 stars. I cannot remember why I didn't give it 5. But yeah, I loved the book, loved the edition. And I can say it's safe to say that this isn't going anywhere. All right. Book number 2. So, in the case of Goldilocks versus the Three Bears, this book was just right. This book was too much. This book was too little. Okay, let's talk. So, in this book, Spencer ends up going to the alien race to try and, blend in with them and kind of be like a mole, I guess, to find out information. And there's not a lot I remember from this book because it was just information overload. This book, it was a very simple premise. I mean, Brandon Sanderson writes amazing books anyway, so I was thoroughly entertained, but the premise was very simple. Father dies, daughter, our protagonist, is treated completely unfairly. She's determined to do the same job her dad did, so let's get her into training and see how things are going to go. That's it. Where this one is, okay, now Spencer is with the alien race. She's trying to blend in with them so she can be a mole, but we learn so many different things about so many different races, and there's so much world building that goes on that honestly, it was just, as I say, information overload. It was way too much for me. Now, what did I rate this? I also rated it 4 stars. And I think that, the reason I docked a star was because it was way, way too much for me. But, I wanted to continue on with the series. So, that's good because I have other series. One that you would have seen in my last SAS video, where after reading the second book, I went, I'm glad I read book 2 because I am reading book 3. But with this one, I still wanted to keep going. So, 4-star read for this one. So then we get to this one. And as I said, there was a big time jump between me reading books 1 and 2 and this one. As I said earlier, I read Skyward in September of 2020, I read Star Sight in October of 2020, and then I read this one in 2022, in June. So it was a good, nearly 2 years later when I picked up this book. But I remembered the basic premise from book 1, and I remembered the basic premise for book 2, and went into this one, and I didn't like it. It wasn't that I hated it. It wasn't a 1-star read. It got 3 stars. It got 3 stars for a reason. But Spencer ends up trapped on this island, I guess is the best way to say it. It's probably dimensions a better way to say it. She's trapped in this dimension, but it feels more like a jungle island type thing. And, she's spending the entire time in this book trying to find her way out of this dimensioned island type thing. And it, as I say, book 1, perfect. Book 2, information overload. Book 3, way too simplistic. Like, it was more simple than book 1, and I just did not enjoy that. Okay, very quickly I'll divert from my thoughts on the book and go and talk as far as my thoughts on the series as a whole. I want to mention 2 side characters that I fell in love with that really carry the book for me. Whilst I do love Spencer as a protagonist in this series, there are 2 side characters that I absolutely love. I'm trying to remember both of their names, but the first one is Dune Slug, who literally is a slug that everyone loves so much to the point that Brandon Sanderson's actually brought out merchandise of this slug in the form of a plushie toy. And the slug's main colours are dark blue and yellow, and it is a really adorable thing, and it's an adorable thing in the series too. It's really hard to understand what the slug says most of the time, at least to Spencer, but the slug sings every now and again, and that's just really adorable, so I love that. But also, I want to talk about the AI in this book, and you know what, I don't remember the name of the AI that's in this series, but there is an artificially intelligent being that we first meet on a ship that Spencer stays in because, in book 1, because obviously no one likes her, so they don't even offer her a dorm at the training facility, so she sleeps in this abandoned ship. And this, AI being is there, and I loved getting to know this AI being, and the AI being continues to follow Spencer throughout the series, including in this one, where the AI is no longer in the ship. Somehow the AI has been removed from the ship and can basically move alongside Spencer. So it's like a portable AI. Portable is the right word, like a movable AI. So that's good. But the humor is so fantastic because it's AI. It thinks that it's right with everything, and everything in its system is telling it, how it is and how things are meant to be. And Spencer would correct the AI every so often, saying, no, what about this or that? Or, what about a joke? And the AI will be like, a joke? What is the point of a joke? According to my sources, I mean, it's just great. I love artificially intelligent beings in fiction because they're just so neutral and factual and knowledgeable, and when you throw something at them that they don't know, it's just hilarious. And so, Spencer and Doonslag and the AI being, I'm sorry I don't remember the AI being's name, really do make the series for me. I'm going to wait and see what happens. I don't even know if book 4 is out. It might be, but I might be up for reading book number 4. I'm hoping book number 4 will be just as good as book 1, but there you go. That's the second series, and I really love the additions. I think book 2 doesn't look as good as the rest because the colour, it's not as colourful, but certainly I love book 1 and book 3. I love the use of the colour and how Spencer looks, where with the UK edition, they're mostly like fully black, and there's no colour, it doesn't pop at all, but I love these ones. So once again, if you want to purchase a copy of these editions for yourself, it is Delacorte Press that you would need to be looking out for. Alright, let's move on to the final series I'm going to discuss in this video. Now, there are no coincidences here. There is a purposeful reason why I am doing today's series in this particular order, and they all have to do with how much I remember about the series and how much I love this series. I definitely saved the best out of these 3 series for last, and that series is The Twilight Saga by Stephenie Meyer. How much time do you have? I'm sure that you don't have as much time as I would like, because I could talk about this series literally for hours and hours and hours. Okay, so let's go through ratings. Twilight Book 1 I reread because I'd read the series when they first came out, but read for the first time on my channel. This one in October of 2021, gave it 5 stars. New Moon I read in November of 2021 and gave it 4 stars. Eclipse I read in March of 2022 and gave it 5 stars. And in April of 2022 I read Breaking Dawn and gave it 5 stars. Alright, I'm going to be as brief as I possibly can, but goodness knows I want to say a heck of a lot more than I'm saying here. So if you want to know more, let me know, and I might just do a dedicated video just to the Twilight Saga alone, because there's just so much to say. Book 1. So as I said, I read this entire series when it first came out and I absolutely loved it. I was looking for something different, and I think I had, I don't remember it that well, but I'd either just come off reading the Harry Potter series or I had just come off reading the Vampire Academy series and then ended up reading this one. So it was somewhere in there because my childhood memories of series extend to Harry Potter, Vampire Academy, and Twilight. So these books, I have very fond memories of them, but didn't remember everything that happened in them. So when I picked up this book, I was very excited to read it because I remembered that I loved it as a child, but my number one reason for picking it up was now that I'm running a booktube channel, I want to read this book, and if I allow myself, the entire series with a critical eye. And let me tell you, I picked up this book, began reading, and had a notepad and pen next to me. Anything critical, I was ready to write it down. Then I read the first 2 pages and boom, that idea went right out the window because this book is just so fantastic that it ended up just washing over me, and I was there living the experience, and I was not being the critically minded reader that I wanted to be. But I didn't care because I was enjoying it so much. So yeah, very quickly that notepad and pen was removed and I just enjoyed it for what it was and gave it 5 stars. So the basic premise, if you don't know, is that this series, I mean, it's very popular, but either way, it follows a woman by the name of Bella Swan who ends up having to move interstate and live with her father for a reason that I keep forgetting, but that's okay. And while she's with him, she goes to school in his area because she's a high schooler, and she meets a guy on her first day at school whose name is Edward Cullen. He seems very different to everyone else, and she's very drawn to him. Turns out he's different for a reason. Edward Cullen is a vampire. I don't think at this stage that that's a spoiler. I feel like this series is going to become a classic series in time. It was just such a successful book series, so I don't feel like that's a spoiler. Bella is reacquainted with a childhood friend that she used to hang around with when she used to live with her father, named Jacob Black, and she finds out something interesting about him too. Jacob Black is a werewolf. The series then progresses into many different things, but the one thing that remains, the one constant, is that there is a love triangle going on between Bella and Edward and Bella and Jacob, and depending upon which book you're reading, one character of either Edward or Jacob is going to be highlighted more than the other. In book one, we focus more on Edward, and it's great. We get to learn a lot about Edward as a vampire, as well as his family, a huge family of vampires, as well as vampire lore in the world building of this series in book one. And there's a lot to take in, but the way that Stephenie Meyer writes this series, oh my gosh, it is just so enticing to read. I think another writer could easily attempt to write the Twilight series, but I may not be as enticed to read it because you need to have an amazing fantasy world to draw me in anyway, but then Stephenie Meyer allows the world itself to be the selling point, as opposed to her writing style, which is rather basic, but I say this as a positive, because if she wrote with purple prose and flowery writing, it would really annoy me because it would be another barrier to the clarity of the world. But because Stephenie Meyer allows the world to be the selling feature, to sell the series itself, and have her writing style be a basic, simplistic writing style, it was a lot more enticing for me to read. I loved reading book one. I loved being in this world. As I said, I threw away the pad and pen very, very quickly and enjoyed the ending and couldn't wait to get on to book number 2. New Moon, for reasons that I won't spoil, Edward has to go away for a while, and so we spend the majority of our time with Jacob. And what I love is, just like in book one, this time with Jacob, we not only get to learn more about him being a werewolf, but we get to learn more about werewolves in general. And so it is another great opportunity for fantastic world building. I end up giving this book 4 stars, and it's just, yeah. The beginning of the book was tough for me to get through. We deal with angsty Bella. I was just going through my Goodreads review. I have a very incredibly in-depth review for this book, for New Moon, because a lot of people don't like book number 2. And so I was trying to unpack why people don't like it and why I do. And I'm trying to use code words. I was talking about how one of the main characters, which I've already said who, Edward, ends up having to depart. And then Bella becomes a bit depressed, becomes a bit angsty. And then I was saying, and then we hit a situation of departo reapiro, and suddenly Bella gets happy again. I love how I wrote departo reapiro. Yeah, it's incredibly in-depth in my review, so please do feel free to check it out. I'm just trying to work out why I docked a star for this one. Once again, I'll just reiterate that review that I did is very long on Goodreads, so go check it out. But yeah, the main reason was, as I suspected, angsty Bella. But yeah, the world building, especially with Jacob, was fantastic in this one, so I still like it 4 stars worth. Okay, I have a shorter review of this one, and it's not really giving me any clues as to what goes on in this book, and I'm struggling to remember what happens in this book, but I did like it. I did give it 5 stars. It's mainly set up, however, for book 4, and Bella needs to make a tough decision between Jacob and Edward. Honestly, that's the most I remember out of it. If I remember correctly, I think the Volturi are actually introduced in this book, if I'm remembering right, so I appreciate that. But yeah, I thought that the book was good. It was 5 stars good for me. I'm just so sorry that I don't remember what happened in the third one. I feel like it's third book syndrome, unfortunately. But this one, how much time do you have? Twilight Breaking Dawn, book number 4. Oh my gosh, so good. We are building up to something. I need to try and codify here because I don't want to give away spoilers, but from the end of book 1, Bella and Edward are at Bella's, I think it's a homecoming or something. She's something. And she asks him to do something. He says no. And then we get a back and forth over book 2 and book 3 with Bella saying, do it, and Edward saying, no, and Bella saying, do it, and Edward saying, no. Well, finally in this book it happens. So there you go. Hopefully I codified enough. And I loved that. It was so good. So we also get a change in perspective in this book. Not all the way through. It is 3/4 Bella's perspective, but then at the halfway mark, up to the 3/4 mark, we get Jacob's perspective, which is interesting that we switch. I didn't know how I was going to feel about switching into Jacob's perspective, to be honest, because I was so used to Bella's, but it happens for a good reason. And I appreciate why it did, and I enjoyed getting Jacob's perspective for that moment. The ending is so good. It honestly, I was looking forward to a certain something happening at the end, because from the 3/4 mark onwards, we know that we're leading towards something absolutely massive. We know this. And then that massive thing happens, but it happens in a completely different way to what I expected. And I loved it even more, which was so good. I ended up watching these 2 movies after I'd read each one. So I watched after reading this one, and then I watched part 1 and 2 after reading this one. And I struggled a little bit with the movies compared to the books. I have to say, I do prefer the books. So if you've seen the movies and you don't like them, please give the books a go. Because in my opinion, the books are better. But yeah, all in all, an amazing series. And quickly going through it again. Book 1, 5 stars. Book 2, 4 stars. Book 3, 5 stars. And book 4, 5 stars. A wonderful saga that I highly recommend. If you are a fan of Harry Potter, if you are a fan of the Vampire Academy series, and you want something else to sink your teeth into that will undoubtedly become a classic with time, then I highly recommend the Twilight Saga, because it's just fantastic. Alright, this video has gone on a lot longer than I thought it would, but hey, I had a lot to say, so I hope that you enjoyed it. If you would like my SAS list videos to be shorter, let me know in the comments below. If you're happy with the length or want them to be longer, let me know that too. I'm very happy to oblige either way, but for this one, that is where I am going to leave it. Those are the first 3 series that we can say I've knocked off of my SAS list in 2022. What are some of the series that you knocked off of your SAS list so far this year? Let me know in the comment section below. And if you don't have a SAS list, are you currently reading a series, or did you complete a series this year? Let me know that in the comment section below as well. But in the meantime, that is where I am going to leave it, letting you all go with peace, blessings, and so much love. Please do be kind and love one another, and spread your sparkling energy all throughout the world. And until next time, happy reading. Bye everyone!